Hello everyone. So, I was going to work on my next transmog video, but then Blizzard said that they were most likely not going to have flying in future expansions. So, yeah, I would really prefer to be happy about the stuff that Blizzard does, but recently they just appear to be so astoundingly out of touch with the people who are playing their game that they constantly leave me baffled by doing lots and lots of really silly things. So first of all, how do we know this? Well, in an interview with Polygon, Ian Hazakostas said that in future expansions they will likely have no flying outside of specific zones or ideas. I should also mention, I had to read Polygon for my job. That's a bit unfortunate. Now before I move on, they did say that there will be a new reputation in Tanan that will appear in the next PTR build as they're still fleshing it out. So there you go, that's your positive for the video. If you don't want to hear people talk about things that aren't always, sunshine and roses, then maybe it's best to just, go watch yesterday's video now, because the rest of this ain't going to be really that happy. So, I think this decision is a really, really big misstep from Blizzard. From the post-BlizzCon 2013 period right up until now, I thought that no flying in patch 6.0 was a good idea, and the same thing goes for 6.1 as it didn't really expand into new areas. And I still think that. I still think no flying up to right now was the right decision. Why? Well, because Draenor was current content, and I think it's okay to have no flying in current content. However, once that content has been out for 6 months, I see no harm in allowing people to fly. I think it's completely fine. For those who cared the most about that content, they will have, well, pretty much got the enjoyment out of it, and will have already finished it. I don't think they're hurting anyone. So just to reiterate, what we know from this interview is no flying in 6.2, and also no flying, most likely, in the future expansions. Now, this seems like a bit of an absurd overreaction on Blizzard's part. They really do seem to just pendulum from left to right, from idea A to the complete opposite, going from extreme to extreme and then completely missing out on the middle ground, which would have probably left the most people happy. Another thing that really got to me here is the manner of communication. When talking about such a major thing like this, announcing it in a mention to an external website simply isn't a good idea, especially when you're dealing with a, I suppose, air quotes, community or whatever, like what it is with World of Warcraft. I think a lot of people just felt really out of the loop, unheard, and really uncared about when they just see it appear on a faceless website. At the very least, a dev water cooler blog post or something like that would have felt a bit more personal, and it would have, more importantly, offered Blizzard a chance to really go into depth about their reasoning, especially since, saying most likely no flying in all future expansions, that is a very big statement. To just drop that statement and, drop the mic, leave the building, not a good idea. There's also the fact that Blizzard said flying would return during Warlords of Draenor. That clearly is not going to be the case by the looks of things. If you're going to backtrack on something, then at least directly address your players on it. As much as they said this was all an experiment, I think for many people it's going to just be another point on the long list of backtracks, failures, and moved goalposts for this expansion, which is just so unfortunate. They really do just seem to be failing hard on the topic of communication. Never have I felt like they don't know what's going on in their game more than now. Criticisms are rarely answered with any meaning whatsoever, and all the interviews just seem to be prattling off the same insipid shite that we're all used to at this stage from a Blizzard interview. They used to be something I'd look forward to because I'd get some, cool material for a video, but now it's just, they're all the same. Outside of raid content, I just feel like they're so detached from what makes Warcraft fun, and I'd say the numbers speak for this. They've lost nearly a third of their players in 3 months. And that's the biggest post-launch dip that they've ever had, far larger than any in the past, like by many times in some cases. The whole reason behind the restricted flying in Warlords was the benefit that it would bring to the exploration content, like the rares and the treasures. Plus, it meant that they could design quests and areas in a more specific manner, and that worked out great during the leveling. But we wouldn't really have been flying during the leveling anyway, based on most of the past expansions, with the exception of Cataclysm. At max level, the rares and treasures hardly mattered, the reps sucked, and so do the Apexis missions. The level 100 world content did not take that much advantage of how we were on the ground. Sure, the Garrison campaign and Apexis missions couldn't be dive-bombed, but outside of that, was there really much benefit? Perhaps if they had proper reps, zone-wide events, relevant treasures, and just overall more world content, then the no-flying experiment would have just worked out so much better, and perhaps provided them with more useful and relevant data to work with. Nonetheless though, I'm still in the pro no flying in current content camp. That means that I think flying should open up for the rest of Draenor, that is with the exception of Tanan Jungle, in patch 6.2. I think that makes sense. It seems like the best of both worlds, a happy medium in which, as far as I can tell, most people will be happy enough. Now, for some of us, and probably me included, I don't particularly mind from a personal perspective whether there's flying or not in patch 6.2, but I know that for loads of people, they do want flying. And I just think that having it so that when something isn't brand spanking new world content, you're allowed to fly in it, I just think that makes the most people happy. And that seems to be okay, from what I can tell, because they're still going to reap all of those benefits when the content actually matters. From most of the polls that I've seen, it seems like people are about 60-40 for to against when it comes to the flying issue. So having no flying in the current content and then flying in the non-current content simply seems like the best option that's going to keep the most people happy. If they want to extend that to having no flying in any content patch zones within an expansion, with flying being allowed in the main world as of the first major patch, then actually I'm good with that, and in fact I think it's probably the best decision. Looking back at, say, Mists of Pandaria, I would have been happy enough if there was no flying in Pandaria until patch 6 or 5.2, and then 5.2 would have no flying and 5.4 would have no flying, pretty much as it was, but starting off with no flying so that people would have got more of a benefit from some of the actually pretty cool exploration content that was floating around in Mists. So it does seem odd that they would just jump right to this decision of no flying in expansions, probably, whatever. That just seems a bit weird without even trying flying out in Draenor. It seems like they're making their conclusions after only doing half the experiment. Just overreactions and change for the sake of change seem to be the norm these days. Only a few days ago we had them implement the whole just absurdly, hole-laden, I suppose, plan to basically just ruin raid gearing. I put that in the PTR and pretty much everyone who raids was like, what? This is dumb. They've been doing loads of things like that, just change for the sake of change. That, I think in general is just getting really... It's getting on people's gears, and Blizzard themselves say that one of the biggest reasons why people leave the game is changes in patches and things like that. As in, you know, I think specifically they always mention having too many class changes in a patch is not really a good idea for player abandonment. Well, I think that having just so much random change for the sake of change bollocks in patches, that just kind of gets to people, I think. And honestly, just this whole thing seems so misguided and disconnected from players. I think it's easy to see the benefits of no flying in current content, but to have that be the case for all of the time in all of the past content is just going to be more harm than good, and I don't think it's for the best in terms of the overall game's health. If they're going to have no flying in future expansions, then all I would say is this: there needs to be lots of good world content to back it up. More zone events, roaming zone bosses, relevant max level treasures, properly fleshed out reputations, and maybe cool achievement hunt things like what was going on for the lore masters in MoP. With WoD, they built terrible world content. Let's be honest, in comparison to past expansions, it's not that good at all. They then put way too much power and stuff and time sinks in the garrison, and then they made movement less convenient. Are they really surprised that people felt stuck in their garrisons? It's how they designed the game. You know, this just whole period has been so depressing. Blizzards just seem to make misstep after misstep. They don't communicate that much, and when they do communicate, it's generally all fluff. They don't seem to answer criticisms, and it's all just a bit depressing. As someone who genuinely loves World of Warcraft, this is the game that I've put by far the most hours into, and it just sucks that so much of what Blizzard says just seems to be really silly and against the, you know, what made the game great in days gone by. It all seems a bit unfortunate, and I'm just going to leave the video on asking you what you think. Specifically, if you are someone who, like me, agrees with the idea of no flying in current content, what do you think it's like just having no flying at all for all of the future expansions, unless perhaps they designed an air zone? I'm really interested in what that particular camp of people has got to think on this issue. Anyway, that's it for me, guys. Thanks for watching the video. Let me know, and I'll see you next time.